Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. Great things take time. I think in a world of instant gratification, everybody wants things quickly. I've learned from experience over the last 5 years that the best things in life really do happen over the course of a long period of time. Sam Akif, our guest today. A good friend of the Culture Matters podcast. Been on the show before. Shout out to season 26, episode 304. Our guest today has been a supporter of me back, when I was sweating. And that's about all the value I was given was just sweating. He's been supportive, very much a visionary, very much a person of grit and a successful advisor to those that invest in real estate, desire to have the best transaction as far as their residential needs, home buying and so on, but specific to that investor mindset. I admire you, brother. So thanks for coming back to the podcast. If you're listening, you haven't listened to episode 304, I would challenge you to go over there after this and follow Sam. So, Sam, thanks for coming back. I can't wait to pick your brain and what you see and
My
what we need to be
pleasure.
doing and thinking. So thanks for coming back, brother. I had to pick that quote.
Yeah,
It
that's
was like one of
that's
those Wikipedia ones.
yeah, that describes my mindset very well. It's a pleasure to be here, man. So yeah, I'm just going on that quote. It's a topic that most people don't really think about that much anymore. I mean, because we can have everything instantly in this life, and I think you know, the riches are in the time frame. So the more I get into this business, the more I realize that things really take time, especially this market cycle that we just went through. Um, a lot of people, a lot of realtors and brokers dropped out of the business. I think the statistic was like 50% of realtors got out of the business during COVID. Uh,
Whoa.
and I think that was a lot of sales industries. Money was tight. Inflation has been high. So it's been a tough period, but I'm seeing the market starting to take a turn. Yesterday, the Dow Jones was up uh, the highest past the highest ever the day after a presidential election, which was interesting.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So Bitcoin is at an all-time high, something that I'm very interested in. In addition to real estate, I'm seeing a lot of buyers and sellers coming back into the market literally the day after the election. So we're seeing so many different changes, and they're happening so rapidly. And but there was a 3 to 4 year period, or 3 year period, I'd say, where the market was kind of people were on the sidelines and they didn't know what they were going to do. And now things are changing, and eh, I'm excited for the coming months and years.
How important has belief in yourself been in your career?
Um, belief is belief is probably maybe not the single most important thing, but close to it. I mean, in my career, I'm self-employed, so you know, I have to rely on myself to get business and to close business, and without the belief in myself, it's next to impossible to succeed in this business. So I'd say belief is extremely important.
What advice do you have for the 30, our generation right
Hmm.
now in this time? Like that thou shall not. They're starting to make money,
Hmm.
maybe a little too much. Because we have a lot of listeners that are up and coming as well, not just,
Sure.
you know, the people
Yeah.
on the mountain talking down on us. Because we're younger, right? And
Yeah.
there are maybe a small percentage. I love actually just real I should look and see how many of our guests are that 30 to 40 range.
Yeah.
But I
I'll
know
be
it's got to be
30
less
in
than
a week.
20%.
So
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I'll be 30 in a week.
Yeah, it's crazy because I actually forgot that you're such an old soul. A compliment. I mean that. So yeah, wow, congratulations. Happy birthday. So
Thank you.
yeah, if you're listening to this, Sam's done so amazing in his life, not even 30. So yeah, what advice do you have for I guess you're a millennial, we're millennials?
Yeah, millennial.
Yeah. Are we the lost generation?
Were we a little generation? I mean, well, let me say, what advice would I give? I would say, a, number one, going back to your quote, is good. Everything worthwhile in life takes time. Um, because nowadays, like kind of like we had discussed, we can go on our phones and we get a text message and we can respond instantly. We go to our email, we can respond instantly. But comparing the instant gratification to the market, they're two very different things. Like I said earlier, the market for the past few years has been a little bit rough. Beginning of end of 21, beginning of 22, we were at the top of the cycle, and we've kind of had to ride it out for the last couple of years. And for the people that, for the people in real estate, the salespeople, if you weren't able to hold on for that period, it was a bumpy ride. And if you couldn't stick to the basics and make lead generation your top priority, do the little things very well, follow up with people, build that relationship with your clients, be the trusted advisor, tell them what they want to hear, not what they tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Um, so my advice would be do the little things well and be in a growth mindset, not a saving mindset, because I'm seeing a lot of advice on Instagram, social media. You save, save, save. You can save here, you can save here. And really, the truth is, if you look at guys like Grant Cardone, who I admire, they during cycles like the one we just went through, guys like that are doubling down on expansion. They're not trying to save their way to success. So I think the number one thing I would say is look at things in a long time frame, build a plan of action for that time frame, and do the little things well. Um, and double down on expansion. Build build systems and processes, and figure out what works well for you, and ignore the noise and just stick to what you know. And it's kind of a boring answer, but it's for me, it's what works. And I think for a lot of other guys that are doing the same thing, I've seen it work for them as well too. So
What
uh,
percentage do you think of like the mid 20, late 20, people that you came up with? They just, if everyone's swimming towards success,
yeah.
some people drowned, some people made it.
Yeah.
There's a little island.
Hmm.
You're on the island, on the Culture Matters podcast. And some other, if there's 100 people swimming towards that island,
Sure.
it's like, like a little analysis here. How many are still swimming or have maybe
I
drowned? I don't
think
know if
I
that's a
think
nice analogy,
Yeah,
but
no, I get what you're saying. I mean, I would say the majority of them are still swimming. People are, the quote that was going around in the real estate industry for a while was, since 2022, middle of COVID, was survive until 25. That was the quote, that was the popular quote that everyone was saying, and then it started to die off. And then, again, a lot of realtors got out of the business. 23, 24, now we're in 24, and people are just trying to hang on as best as possible. But the reason the reason I was able to survive through that period was because of the bricks and the foundation that I laid when I first got into the business in 2016. So
wow.
I I was able to buy several properties when I was 21, and because of inflation, and so a combination of the knowledge I understood about the market and where things were headed, the economy, the dollar, I understood that with inflation getting worse and the money printing that was happening, if I just bought real estate and held on to it in 2016 and 2017, then I knew that I would build a lot of equity so that when the next cycle came, I would have enough equity to, you know, save myself from what was coming, and also use those funds to help grow my business when everybody else was contracting. So, it's a combination of looking at the long term, building a plan, and then, executing on that plan when you can see the writing on the wall. So that's kind of what I did. And yeah, I mean, it's really, you really have to see things. Most people want to flip houses or, wholesale properties. That's a popular thing that's been going on for the last decade. And that's short-term money. Um, Again, I never looked at the business from that aspect. I've always been, where am I going to be when I'm 30? Where am I going to be when I'm 40? Where am I going to be when I'm 50? And how can I write myself a business plan that's going to allow me to survive through, typically a cycle is about seven. In this case, it was 10 years before we reached, COVID. But, looking at it from a holistic perspective rather than just, how can I make money this week or this month?
What advice do you have for our listeners on how to look farther ahead? Do you sit down in a room, a dark room,
For
the
me,
air all the way down, and
yeah, for me, it's a lot of, I mean, self-reflection is important, of course, but podcast reading, I mean, I immerse myself in books and podcasts. That's kind of, I don't watch too much TV. Um, I have different podcasters that I listen to, and I have a handful of books. I try to read a book every 2 to 3 weeks. I like Audible. That's my thing. So, just updating yourself on the top players in the market, the guys that have seen three, four, five cycles, studying their perspective, and not just one perspective, but multiple perspectives, and then kind of formulating your own opinion on what you think is going to happen, understanding economics from even a basic standpoint. I spent a lot of time reading about economics and human behavior. Those are two of my favorite
why are
topics.
they important?
Psychology.
Yeah, why those three?
Well, when I was 18, I studied the stock market and I day traded from actually I was 17 to 19. I day traded every day.
Wow.
And I read probably close to 10 to 12 books on trading stocks. And I learned from a lot of the guys that have done it for a long time that, markets are cyclical. And, from there, I created a thesis that, then I learned about economics and I learned where the money supply was going and that we were printing rapidly and it wasn't getting better, it was only getting worse. Came to the conclusion that inflation was probably going to get worse and it is going to continue to get worse. And when you hold commodities and assets, they typically tend to go up over time. So, I saw the recurring theme amongst, most of the top guys that this was kind of what was going on. And I heard it from multiple people that have been in the industry through multiple cycles. And I said to myself, okay, there's a common theme I'm seeing amongst all these top guys. This is my thesis. I believe that X, Y, Z is going to happen in the next decade. And I've continued to learn and I'm continue to see the same pattern. And so it's really understanding patterns, the economy, and when you can believe in yourself and believe in your own, opinions of what you're reading and come to your own conclusion, then and you can stay true to that and ignore the noise. That's really where the magic happens. And all the guys that I've listened to and studied have said the same thing, basically.
Wow. What advice do you have on someone that's bought property and right now they're thinking about it, getting the hell out of it? It
Mhm.
wasn't what the infomercial
Uh-huh.
made it appear to be.
Um, I guess I would analyze why you want to get out of it. Because I think real estate is hands down the best investment. Um, Bitcoin's probably right now for me the second best. Um, but I would really analyze why are you selling it? Do you need money? What's the purpose for you selling it? Are you going to use those funds for another investment? Because if you're just going to sell it and have cash and not use it to either, typically my thesis is, if you have a business, the best thing to do is invest in yourself and grow your business. And then the next best thing is invest in assets. So if you don't have a business that you're going to use those funds for to grow, then, or you're not going to invest in something else, why are you getting that cash? Unless it's just to survive. I typically don't sell anything unless I need that for a correction like the one that we were just in. I sold a property and I used the equity for that to grow my business because I saw a better return in with that equity and growing my personal business than, just having cash or doing something else with it. So I think you just have to figure out what do you need the cash for and what are you using for, and is it going to be a force a set are you going to use it to grow or are you going to use it to survive? Which one is it? And if it's just for, you know, buying things that you don't need, then it's probably not a good idea to sell it. Or if it's in a market that is tanking and you don't want to hold for the long term, you know, you really have to figure out a plan what you're going to use that money for. And if it's not for something that, like I said, is going to grow your business, going to be used for an asset, then you probably shouldn't sell it. But everyone's situation is different.
Are people making deals happen now? Investment
Absolutely.
deals?
Yeah, right now deals are definitely happening. You, I work with a lot of sellers. So I'd say probably about 70% of my business is sellers. 30% is buyers. But right now, if in the Philadelphia market specifically, if you're not priced properly, um, you're just sitting. The property is just sitting and it's not selling. If it's priced according to the market, and tip one good rule of thumb right now in this market is, if you're not the best deal in a given zip code or market in the city, you're probably not going to sell. But with the new sentiment after the election now, people are getting excited. Like I said, the stock market is at highs. It hasn't been this high after the day after an election ever, from what I'm reading.
Wow.
So we can see that investors are starting to be more optimistic. So, there are buyers out there right now, and it's gradually the buyer pool is getting bigger and bigger within the last couple of days,
How do
actually.
you stay focused?
How do I stay focused? That's a good question. I would
Only
say,
when I'm not drinking.
no, so I would say staying focused really is just a combination of your habits. For me, I like to exercise 4 to 5 days a week. Um, I like to have some kind of routine. I like to have a schedule. And meditation's nice. I've kind of slacked on that recently, honestly, but meditation's good because when you're working for yourself, you have to have that belief in yourself and you have to be self-disciplined. And if you don't have a plan of action, even for the day, for the month, for the week, for the year, then it's easy to kind of veer off. So
Mm.
business planning allows me to stay focused, keeping my goals in front of me.
Do you use a calendar religiously, or is that more loose?
I would say I use it. I block off a period of the first half of my days typically for follow-up prospecting.
Mm.
Uh, so, when I don't prospect in the course of a day, I feel it. I know that I haven't, if I can prospect every single day, I could do nothing else the rest of the day and I'm content because I know that this is a business of growth. So if you're not constantly building your business on a daily basis, you're going to feel it in 2 months because the typical deal length of a deal is 30 to 90 days depending on the size of the deal. So if I didn't prospect you know 3 months beforehand, I'm going to feel it in the next 3 months. So knowing what happens when you don't do what you need to do is enough of a motivator for me.
Mm. Um, how about the individual that's starting from zero? Like
Hmm.
your advice to them, they're in independent, they're, what do you call it? Like independent operator, self-employed,
Hmm.
starting at zero. If you started zero tomorrow,
Hmm.
what's the first things you would do?
If I started at zero tomorrow, the first thing I would do would be get I would go to the phone book and I would start calling people. And I'd build a relationship with as many property owners as I possibly could. I'd keep them in my database. I'd get their phone number, email, full name, and I would double down on building relationships with as many property owners as possible because Sellers and buyers. Sellers is the name of this game. The more sellers you're in contact with, the better. And you can't really scale this business just working with buyers unless you have a ton of buyer agents that are working underneath you, which, from a time investment perspective, working with sellers is significantly more lucrative. So I would just double down on a database, building relationships, because sales with AI coming, sales is still one of the top industries to be in. And that's because of relationships. Humans need other human interaction. So if you can be the expert at building relationships with the right people and you can stay in touch with them and be the best person at follow up, um, and then I would also double down on my knowledge, reading, understanding the market, understanding economics. And if you can do those things really well and be consistent with them, then you can really build as big of a business as you want. And then from there, it would really just be putting in the systems and processes, whether that's hiring other people to do the tasks that you don't enjoy or the tasks that are taking up a lot of your time. Um, Real estate sales is no different than building any other type of business, frankly. I mean, it that's why salespeople tend to either do really, really well or they struggle because you have to apply the concepts of business, the economy, all those things
Hmm.
are very similar. That how you build a business is identical to sales.
How important is this email gathering from a
Very.
sales perspective? Yeah.
It's extremely important because in this day and age, everyone's on their email, they're texting. So if you have their cell phone number and you have their email, you can build out different plans of, staying top of mind with people. I send out a weekly newsletter to my database. And the amount of business I've gotten just from getting emails from people that I may not have even talked to for a year or 2 years. And they see my weekly email and they know that I'm still actively in the business. They know that things are moving, shaking. Um, that I'm staying on top of mind with them because they see me every week. So when their cousin's ready to sell their building or they're ready to sell, they don't have to think twice. They know the person to call, and it's a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, I mean, you just spark a thought in my head. It's like I I have obviously a lot of people's emails because I'm like to get on the show, right?
Yeah,
Come on the show. I'm gonna email you myself and make it happen. There's no way I'm gonna do 30, 40 interviews 30 interviews this week, really,
yeah,
actually. Without doing that. It's like, what if I could send something like a culture tip or something very detailed that was obviously this is my ego, like that it was actually valuable. Like, no one
sure.
else is going to be thinking about that as well. It's like I'm not doing those types of things. Even just this conversation, it's like accountability.
Yeah.
Um,
And frankly, I
and
think there's
I have nothing to sell. Like that's everyone has something to sell, but I'm already putting out that on the podcast. Like, hey, this is what I think. I should
Mhm.
type up like one of these 10-minute monologues and send it to the people I care about, like
Yeah, absolutely.
that I know
Absolutely.
care about culture, and they're like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah. Yeah. And
Culture.
what you do with the handwritten letters is powerful too. I've done a lot
Thanks.
of that myself, and that's
I got my mom's right here. She inspired me to do it.
yeah, that's beautiful.
Because I was like in my late 20s, yeah, my I have two moms, right? Barbara, who saved me from the foster system.
Yeah.
She's been on the podcast, episode 242. Shout out to Barbara. She
Okay.
gave me
Gotta
this
watch it.
box of letters, and Linda had written me all these letters.
Yeah.
I wrote this one. I have, and when I meet her again, I'm going to give her this.
I love that.
Keep it right here. So it's inspired from my family, is why I write the letters to people that are in my life that I think I have something to say. Like I'll write the letter.
And it's
I know you
meaningful.
do that too.
I do. I do. It's meaningful because, I how many times I've written handwritten letters and I've had people call me and they say, I don't even get letters from my grandchildren for my birthday, and you're writing me a letter. And it's powerful and it's simple. And in this age of technology where everything is instant gratification, for someone to that you don't even know, for instance, in my business, to sit down and spend the time to write them a letter, it's a powerful technique.
I don't know anyone that does it other than you. Actually, I was inspired by that, and the shout out to the payment group that would write handwritten notes to customers,
Yeah,
like just thanking people for
yeah,
working with
yeah.
them. By the way, can people read the let? Because I just got some feedback that my handwriting's improved.
Your handwriting's good. I think you wrote me a letter and I think I still have it.
I've been working on my handwriting, but like that was an insecurity of mine too. Maybe this could be helpful to the audience. Like, uh, maybe I shouldn't do it because no one's going to be able to read my handwriting, but I'll do it anyway because I just want to put the thought out.
You
Did you
should.
ever struggle with that insecurity or anything like that?
Actually, you know what? Not at all. Because at the end of the day, there's a quote from, forget who said the quote, but it was people don't care what you say. They care about how you make them feel. And it's taken me in the beginning of my business, I didn't understand that. I thought I had to say all the right things at all the time, all the right times. And the truth of the matter is people remember how you make them feel at the end of your interaction or conversation. When they hang up the phone or they open the letter, they're not critiquing you on how great your handwriting is, because my handwriting is not great at all, to be honest. But when they finish reading that letter, if they even read it, sometimes they don't even read it. They just look at it, they see my name, and they call me. And it's the fact that you took the time to do it, and that you're valuing. You're saying, okay, I'm going to say my time is it's worth my time to spend the time and sit there and write this for you. So I think it's the feeling that they get from it, not necessarily exactly how nice your writing is, or sometimes even the times I write with the worst writing is the best response. So it's the action
Oh, I
and
found you really want someone to call you. Make sure you scribble.
yeah, no, actually you'd be
That's
surprised.
so funny. Yeah, that's too
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, or crumble up the paper. And some wholesalers I've talked to that have really big successes with handwritten letters, they they scribble, then they crumble the paper up, and then they put it in the envelope, and it makes the person open up like, who would
Wow.
send me this? And it leaves a lasting effect. So I think it's the feeling they get more than what you wrote or how you wrote it.
But this conversation's led me to an epiphany, and I could be doing more. I have emails. I care. There's things I'd like to say that I think are valuable.
Mhm.
It's like I should write clearly something and then send it to people that I think would want it.
Absolutely.
Using email. I never thought of it as clear as right now. I don't know why, but that's interesting. That's the value of this doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I have epiphanies all the time. It's like, how can I put this? And so that's the next question is how well over your career have you been able to put things into action that you had ideas? Is that something that became better with time, or have you
Yeah.
always been good at that? Because I know you get things done. You're a
Yeah.
get things done person.
I think over time, over time it's gotten a little bit easier, but I like to, when I have a win, I like to analyze the win. And then when I have a loss, I like to analyze the loss, and then not for too long, 5 minutes, and then figure out what I could do better. And but specifically my wins, when I have made an action that I thought wasn't achievable, and I didn't think I'd get the result from that action. When I do, I give myself personally a pat on the back, and I say, okay, this worked. Let me continue doing this. And I've picked a dozen things, that ways to get business, and only three or four of those really stuck, and they seem to work. I try to give everything, at least 4 to 5 months of consistency before I give up on it. And when I see the results, then I go full force in what works for me, works for my personality, works for my lifestyle, works for my business. And I kind of use those wins as leverage to
Mm.
keep my mindset where it needs to be and continue doing that action.
In closing, what would you say is one thing our listeners should avoid in 2025 to be the most successful
That's
in
it.
there? Because it sounds like survive for third 25
Hmm.
infers 25 is going to be an awesome year. Started off freaking with this. It seems like there's a lot of enthusiasm, although not everybody agrees with who the leader is in the culture. There's
Hmm.
like enthusiasm or like some belief that things are going to get better. So if
Hmm.
that is the case, where the wave is getting higher, what would you we've got to swim to make the wake or whatever. I don't know where these analogy, but what do you suggest we should not do, avoid, as Munger would say, invert, always invert.
Yeah. I would say I think the biggest thing now today is that most people struggle with, especially the younger generation. Actually, no, not the younger generation, the older generation. I'd say it's not really older, but 40 plus. We tend to they tend to look at media too much and take it too literally. I think if you can remove yourself from a lot of the noise, find find two or three people, maybe four or five people that are doing exactly what you want to do, figure out how they're making it through the turbulence, because eventually we will go through another cycle, but figure out the people that are doing it at a high level, ignore the noise, and 90% of the media you just can't listen to because for obvious reasons, but ignore the noise and just double down on what the people that are doing things at a high level and just mimic them. And once you get to a point where it's working, then you can put your own twist on it. But I would say ignore the noise is the number one thing, and have that belief in yourself.
Sam, you're the man. Appreciate you. I challenge our listeners to listen to episode 304, season 26 on the Culture Matters podcast. Very different episode. We went really deep into investing. And one last thing, where can people follow you on Instagram?
Yeah, you can follow me at Sam Akif. I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Instagram I use the most. So, but Sam Akif.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, my man. Nice to see you.